This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
I call to order this regular meeting of the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors on this Tuesday, October the 1st. Supervisors, please rise for the honoring of the flag and moment of reflection by Supervisor Coffey. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we work through our difficult county board decisions, it pains me that the residents affected the most by our budget reductions are most often the residents who need us the most. Those of limited income, those suffering from addictions and their children, and those suffering from mental health issues or abusive relationships. Stephen Green, author of the book Good Value, Reflections on Money, Morality, and an Uncertain World, is a former CEO and current chairman of HSBC, the 14th largest bank worldwide, and an ordained minister. Green laments the massive breakdown in trust in our financial systems, business, politics, and the media. He worries when individuals apply different standards to their business or politics, their political lives, than to their personal lives. I realize the need for a county budget that is sustainable. We also need to evaluate our budget decisions, knowing when we lift up our residents who are desperately in need of us, we lift up the entire community. May we find the balance between budget decisions and those in need. Concurrently, we also need to pressure the state to increase our ability to increase our tax levies to alleviate some of these budget issues.
Thank you. Supervisors, please take in hand your keypads and indicate your presence. Is that working? Not? Okay. A good start for the evening. No?
So Kim, we talked about it, we rejected it. We talked about it, we rejected it.
Okay.
Poor Janet.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Let's just do it by a roll call, a voice roll call. We're having trouble with the system as usual. So I think what we'll do is a voice roll call. I'll ask the clerk to call the names of the members.
Can you try it just one more time?
Oh, we're going to try one more time. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Hey.
Oh, never mind. Okay. Okay, what do we have? 20, I can't see it. 23 present, 6 absent. We have quorum. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is approval of the Journal of Proceedings of September 17th. Motion? Motion by Supervisor Leary, second by Supervisor Wilkie. Any additions, deletions, corrections to the Journal of Proceedings? I see none. We'll do this by voice vote. All those in favor of approving the Journal of Proceedings indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is public comment, but we have no one who has signed up. So we will go to reports to the County Board under 2.04.320. The first is an oral report, an overview of County Health and Human Services finances by Todd Romanesco, County Administrator of Calumet County.
Todd is actually here. He's coming forward. Todd has much experience not only in county administration, but also in the area of human services. Is it working now?
Oh, you turned yourself off. Can you turn yourself on?
So Todd comes with many years of experience both in human services and in county administration. He works at the level of the state with a number of different agencies and partners, and actually has shared this presentation that he will be sharing with you tonight in other counties as well. This is to provide some background regarding actual mandate information, as well as specifics as it pertains to human services programming throughout the state. Todd?
So I'm technologically challenged already on this, Cal?
Okay. Do you need?
It should be on, but just lean into the microphone. Oh, that. Oh.
It timed out, excuse me.
Oh, that's all right. We started off with the balance. So Calumet County has the exact same voting system. So we can relate that sometimes it works, sometimes you want to throw your thing, sometimes people are pointing at it like they're doing the TV thing.
Sorry, it's a long password.
That's okay. Perfect. And it's going to show up there.
Yes, it will. Switch it.
Otherwise, I did bring a thumb drive,
Do you?
just in case
Oh, okay.
you need me to use it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because it's not showing up on here.
Is it, the screen is,
There it is. I got it.
okay.
I think.
You have to back up to screen one.
It does not want to start the slideshow.
You can change that, Catherine.
It doesn't want to start. I
Yeah.
did practice this.
One moment, please.
Hi. I keep trying to apply it, but it's not letting me do it.
Right. And then to advance, use the arrow key.
Thank you. Fixed. Take somebody that knows something about technology. So when Catherine asked me to come to talk to the county board about health and human services funding, I volunteered and agreed right away. I've had this conversation with some county boards around the state before, because this is not necessarily a unique situation that we're in oftentimes. And I really appreciated the words in the beginning, especially as it relates to funding of the services that we need. So the idea for me this evening is to provide some education for you as far as the mandates that we're responsible for, that they call out specifically to County Board of Supervisors responsible for the individuals that we're going to be talking about today a little bit. And with those mandates, I'll talk a little bit as well about the funding sources that go along with it. Oftentimes, what I've heard from County Board Supervisors is a feeling of helplessness, a feeling of powerless type things, because what ends up happening is you make the single most important policy decision as a county board every year when you put your budget together. And at the end of the year, we end up having overruns in human services, and you have to pay for it anyway. And it becomes, what's the point of the policy document? What's the point of creating a budget when we have to pay for it anyway? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And just first of all, appreciate the fact that it puts you in a position of feeling like, well, how do we control things? How do we answer our constituents? So hopefully tonight you'll get a little bit better understanding of where that comes from and what you can do to be a part of changing that, I guess. There have been times where Calumet's been in that situation, La Crosse has been in that situation, counties surrounding you and surrounding me also have had those deficits or challenges around different circumstances. And board members are on the board because they want to fix it. You're dedicating your time to improving Eau Claire County. You're not getting rich for this job. Don't put it all together and figure out how much it costs you to campaign for the signs and then what you get for per diem, because it doesn't usually work out for you. So you're in for the right reasons. And county boards are made up of different expertise at all different levels, and that's what makes it so great, because you're a very eclectic group from all different backgrounds. So the idea is to educate you and allow you to put your trust into people like Catherine and like Diane and others in your staff to turn things around. So we'll start with the mandates so that you know what you're responsible for right off the bat. And youth services mandate and the state statute, and you should have a handout, and I also have some more detailed ones for you. But counties are mandated to provide services to rehabilitate juvenile delinquents. That's what you get under Chapter 938. So Wisconsin state statute provides the mandate and related guidance for these services. So counties are required to pay for the cost of children placed by the court in state facilities or county facilities or detention centers. I had a finance committee at one point tell me, well, you should be able to predict how much it's going to cost you at any given time for Lincoln Hills. And I said, I don't know of any actuarials in the county basement that, and I don't know why I put actuarials in the basement always, but they are working through these numbers and predict that a kid's going to throw a rock through a window. Actually, it was multiple kids. Threw a rock through a window of a speeding vehicle and injured the driver, and we're automatically Lincoln Hills. And you know that that's $100,000, $150,000 per child per year. That'll break the bank. Those are the kinds of things that you are mandated to pay for. You do not have a choice. The judge gets to tell you that they're going to Lincoln Hills and the county gets to pay for it. It's just an example of one of those mandates. Along with that, the revenues. So primarily the revenues for the youth services mandate is your youth aids funding. And if you've been around long enough, you know that that youth aids funding number does not move. If it moves a little bit, but it doesn't really pertain to anything. So if Eau Claire County has several kids in Lincoln Hills, your youth aids number doesn't move because of that. That goes right on your levy. The youth aids number comes out of a very long, complicated formula that's developed over the years that I have a very large file on, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense in terms of where the needs are, and it doesn't go up. Community intervention program is a little bit of money, and that's for some counties you're talking $6,000 to $10,000 to $20,000, and that's what you're supposed to use to do prevention type work with some of the youth services cases. Child Protective Services mandate. So this is the mandate under state statute chapter 48. So counties are mandated by the state to carry out state responsibilities to protect children from abuse and neglect. That's known as the Children's Code. Child welfare services encompass a broad range of services. You're probably familiar with different things in order to bring children to permanence, well-being of children and their families. So this includes prevention if it's possible, child abuse and neglect, to receive and screen reports of child abuse and neglect. So you get reports from mandated reporters or others. You have staff here that make decisions on whether or not it meets the state law of severe and persistent abuse and/or neglect. And then those individuals, based on standards and assessments that they're trained to do, make the decision and determination of what's appropriate and safe for that child. You're required to do that. The county board is actually called out specifically in state statute as being responsible. So every individual on the county board is responsible for that mandate, to make sure that that mandate is carried out. Now, to what level that is carried out varies, and it's not prescribed by the state statute. It's mandated to keep the children safe. The standards are in place, and the practice that we put in place to keep kids safe across the state is fairly consistent. The revenues that match to that are small in terms of what your overall financial liability is. So there's a kinship care revenue, which is a very small piece to keep kids in homes of family members, for example. If you have grandma or grandpa or aunt and uncle, they get a small amount to help care for the child. Promoting safe and stable families is also a very small allocation with some very specific requirements. We have coordinated services team grants. Do you have that here also, I believe? So it was $60,000. I'm not sure if it's every county gets $60,000. So regardless of your size, it usually pays for a portion of a person to be able to provide a specific wraparound service to include people that are important in kids and families' lives to move kids to permanence and keep them safe, such as teachers and neighbors, other people that are important to the family. They give you this little bit of money to develop that type of a program to wraparound service for kids. The 4E Legal Services and EWIS-SACWIS funding is also small. My understanding is there is going to now finally be some 4E legal dollars that we can use to pay for an attorney to help in child protective cases. That has not been the case in the past. But I believe that they have seen that that is a necessity. And I know in conversations I've had regarding Eau Claire County and the need for some possibility for kids to permanence and what that means for termination of parental rights and the amount of time it takes for an attorney and for the courts, that's time consuming. But in the meantime, those kids sit in an expensive placement that's on the tax levy. So to move kids to permanence, better for the kids, better for the families, better for the county bottom line. The long-term support services mandate. So if you've been around a while, you'll recall the waiver system, adult waivers. So counties had the responsibility for developmentally disabled adults, elderly adults. That shifted to family care. And along with that shift went your tax levy. Should have gone down depending on the level of contribution, but now counties share in an ongoing percentage of those costs. So you will, at any given time, I don't know what your number is in Eau Claire, but it's 25% of your overall previous waiver costs that now you continue to pay and have paid since family care began in Eau Claire. That's similar to what we call a maintenance of effort. And if you've not heard what a maintenance of effort is, it's something that you should argue against strongly as a county board supervisor. How many would actually know what a maintenance of effort is, or an MOE? No? Colleen, you know? Yeah, so a maintenance of effort is in long-term care. It exists in children's waivers now. So we have children's waivers and long-term care services that we are no longer allowed to have a waiting list for. It exists in your Birth to 3 program as well. So what ends up happening is the state establishes that minimum threshold that you're required to spend. So you, as Eau Claire County, are required to pay, regardless of your experience, a maintenance of effort for Birth to 3, for children's long-term support waiver, for I can't think of another one. Off the top of my head, maybe it's in the list. But birth to 3 is a mandate, and it'll show up on here as well. But the state identifies what that minimum threshold is, and you will be paying that out of your levy going forward. And they will tell you that's the state-county partnership, right? In order to, I got one laugh so far. The state-county partnership, because in order for those people to receive the services, the state can't afford it entirely on their own. The system was established as county partners taxing the property tax. So that was established, that's the system we have, so you have to share in that going forward, or we can't provide the service we need to provide. So that's how you end up with the maintenance of effort. Anytime they ask you if you would consider or should consider or tell you they're going to do one, you should lobby strongly against it. Talk to WCA and others, because it's not a good deal for us. The revenues that go with long-term support are the waiver dollars, the Children's Community Options Program dollars, and transportation, if you have a transportation program in Eau Claire. If not, it doesn't apply. Birth to 3, so this was the one I was just talking about. You're mandated to provide birth to 3 services or purchase birth to 3 services if you contract out for it. That's the rolling maintenance of effort. So not only do they establish a minimum, but they move it around on you. So when you put together, Diane or Diane's financial people or Catherine put together a budget and it's relating to the birth to 3 MOE, it moves depending on what your experience has been the previous year. And that is going to be the new minimum threshold then. So you have very qualified individuals going into homes to serve kids that need speech or OT or PT, definitely become eligible based on the assessments that are provided. But regardless of the service level that's necessary, you're going to have to spend that maintenance of effort. Now, typically the way it works is you're not going to say, well, we would have spent less than that, because it ends up that you have eligible individuals. But it's the fact that it moves, and depending on your expenses from the previous year, creating that new MOE is a challenge for counties budgeting. The aging services mandate. So you have requirements under the Federal Social Security Act. You have requirements for adult protection, adult protective services. Some county officials have chosen to support the different services at different levels. So even though you have a required mandate, they don't tell you that you have to have, and this is for any program, this is for 48 for kids, or aging or long-term support. They don't tell you you have to have so many staff per capita. They don't require you to do that, but they require you to meet the minimum program requirements for staffing it. So this ebbs and flows depending on what county you're in. So if you were to say, hey, how are you meeting your mandate in Calumet County versus Eau Claire County, it's that same conversation you've heard before as County Board of Supervisors. You've seen one county in Wisconsin, you've seen one county in Wisconsin, because your needs are different than the 3.5 hours across the state than Calumet County needs. Geographically, financially, they vary, right? The dollars that go with that, so we've got Alzheimer's family caregiver support, adult protection services, which is a minimal amount, probably wouldn't even pay for a position, doesn't for us, but yet we need 3. Because the more individuals have issues in the community, so the elderly people are living longer and they're in their homes longer, and families are trying to support them and do their best because people want to be at home, and then things occur. Behaviors happen, aggressive behaviors, or going out into the street, dangerous behaviors occur. It's a stressor on law enforcement. Law enforcement calls Human Services. Human Services goes out to try to work with the family and improve things and get some services involved to keep them in the community. All of those things cost money, and the Adult Protective Service dollars are, I would say for us, it's $20,000. I'm not exactly sure what it is in Eau Claire, but that's nothing, really. So the levy supports it. You're probably familiar with your own elderly benefits specialist, your disability benefits specialist out of your ADRC. Those are services that we provide, and there's some funding for those. Typically, those will cover the cost of the position. Mental health and substance abuse mandate. So this is your state statute 51. So you are required, counties are mandated to provide services to those individuals with mental illness and or substance abuse, known as the Mental Health Act. You have the flexibility as a county in terms of what you provide, and that's why that SHIELD law is underneath the title on that mandate in parentheses, because, or in quotes, because that is one thing where you can say wait list. So if you have outpatient treatment and costs are escalating and you want to put the brakes on something, they allow you within statute, within these mandates, to put the brakes on, used to be on adult waivers. If you remember, people would wait for years and sometimes never receive a service because you could stop it, because you only have to provide the service within your funding availability, which is interesting because even though you don't provide outpatient treatment, let's say, because you can put a wait list on, you still have to pay for the hospitalizations of individuals that have mental health issues to the point of dangerousness. So dangers to themselves or dangers to others. So they allow you to not provide the treatment, but you're going to pay for the high-end cost on the other side of it. So rather than preventing the hospitalization and providing certain levels of treatment, you're going to have to pay for that absent insurance, if that makes sense. The dollars that go along with that are various grants, mental health block grant, substance abuse block grant, community mental health block grant. These are all small dollar grants with very specific requirements in them. So it's even in this area, you can't just pool your dollars and say, okay, this will help our overall mental health. For example, in I believe it's the substance abuse block grant, we are required to spend a certain amount of money on pregnant women that have substance abuse issues. Now, Calumet's 52,000 people, and sometimes we don't have a pregnant woman come with substance abuse issues. So you end up not being able to spend that money, or you have to have a plan to spend that money in a different way. So the thing to remember is there's also strings with some of the revenues, specific plans with some of the revenues that you're required to do. It's not just, oh, it all can go towards our hospitalization costs. That's not the case. Part of the other revenue sources within the mental health and substance abuse, so mental health is that Wisconsin Medicaid cost reporting piece, which is a very complex Medicaid reporting that your staff here do. But it pertains to those Medicaid reimbursements such as comprehensive community services and targeted case management. So you actually have billable staff in Eau Claire County to generate some revenues to pay for the services that they're providing. Now that's fairly new. It started off as a 60-40 split, I believe, at specific rates. And then the state saw the need and was able to draw the federal dollars down. So now counties can get 100% reimbursement on certain community placements with CCS and staff. So many of us have been able to ramp up to pay for, to keep staff off the levy and pay for CCS revenue, which is a good thing from a budgetary standpoint for a county board. I will tell you the only thing you may hear from staff, and this is something that I hear across the state, is the complexity of the paperwork is crazy. So it does take staff time to do that. When you want them in the community doing mental health, they're going to have to still do the necessary paperwork to be able to draw down the revenue to save on the levy. Economic support or income maintenance services mandate, so we're required under Title 19. Now, this is not paying for the benefits, this is for the eligibility determination. So now you're probably familiar with that to some extent. You have regional income maintenance. Back in, I don't know how many years ago, they were going to privatize the eligibility for this public benefit. And we said, no, that's not going to happen. It's a public benefit, and it was against the law, and it was determined that that was accurate. So they said, well, counties can still provide it, but you have to do it by region, in a regional consortium of some sort, and we'll fund you based on that. So we provide the income maintenance eligibility through call centers now. Used to be, we did, actually, I remember, I've been around so long, we used to go in the home with individuals, adults, elderly that couldn't even come in to the office. We would go into their homes and provide that conversation about eligibility for medical assistance. It's also daycare certification, energy assistance, which we typically contract out for. Child support, some counties have it in human services, some don't. We're required to provide that, and there's some federal dollars that are attached to that. And health as well is sometimes in human services and attached to the overall funding. I promised Catherine I would try to do a half an hour. I'm almost there. Some things I did before coming here, I wanted to look at some tax levy per capita to give you something to refer to. So maybe on the handout, it might be difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult to see up here. Took all of the tax levy reported statewide by county for human services expenses to find out a per capita cost per capita to give you a sense of where that may be and whether or not it really matters. So you have somebody like Iron County at the top. Well, it's probably because Iron County's population is only 5,700 people. So when you have a couple of high-cost consumers there, you're going to have a cost per capita which is much higher. Eau Claire comes into the 11th spot at $118. And there's all kinds of things that go into that cost per capita as well. Calumet's not on there, but we're typically at $100 per capita, which is somewhere around the 24th spot. There is no magical number on that. It's just when somebody says, well, what do you typically spend on human services? It's information to share, but there's all different kinds of things that go into that. Because as county boards, and Health and Human Services or Human Services boards, some of the decisions you make determine what those dollars are, if you have waiting lists or not, if your out-of-home care costs are increasing based on meth and opioids and things like that that have occurred, those dollars per capita can go up. So statewide, tax levy by target group I thought was interesting. This tells you statewide we're spending $410 million as counties. Now that's just on the property tax for human services. It gives you a proportionate share of where that money goes statewide. Typically, and this is not shocking, 50% of it goes to abused and neglected children and mental health adults and kids. Those are your high cost drivers in counties. That's where your levy goes. Eau Claire, specifically, I thought you might be interested. If you look at your children and families and your abused and neglected number combined, it's over 50% of the tax levy in human services is in your kids' costs. Now, that's the conversation that I've had with Diane a little bit and with Catherine, is those out-of-home care costs, the meth, the opioids. We've talked about this. We had a WCA working with us. We actually had Republican legislature approve, for the first time that I've ever seen, $25 million to support county tax or county services in kids. So we're all going to get something for it, but it's been grossly underfunded by the state. It's probably the lowest state-funded program in human services, worse than mental health. So counties have been bearing that cost for a long time. And when things come along, such as the meth issues that we've had, that impact kids and families, we end up with these high-cost out-of-home placements. And that's not unique to Eau Claire. That's everywhere. So I thought it would be interesting because that really narrows it down or kind of zeroes in on something for you as an organization to say, well, I feel like I can't really dictate what's going to happen in that budget, and you're right. And I would say you probably shouldn't, because well, just look at the funding sources. You do one thing to a budget in a certain area and you affect another. So as a county board, what I like to tell county boards that I've talked to in my own is the complexities of human services are what they are. And that doesn't mean that you don't have policy-making authority and decisions that you can make as a collective body when it comes to the budget. But what I would advise on is do things like this, educate yourselves on what the mandates are, what the funding sources are, and find out where the high costs are, and ask for a plan. Now, I know that the out-of-home care placements here in Eau Claire are going down, and I know that that takes time, and I know that that's a statewide issue. So as a county board, I've done this with mine before when we've had high-cost placements. I think I was referring to it in the beginning, where, okay, if you're going to have Lincoln Hills high costs, what are we able to do in other areas? So I come with a plan. I come with 3 very specific things that we're going to do and talk about how we're going to do that. And I'm accountable to the county board for those types of things, to say, look, this is what we're doing in out-of-home care. So the conversations with Catherine as far as budget development, or Diane, and say, what's happening? How are we addressing the out-of-home care costs? When I asked about, what are we going to do? What are you going to do with the additional dollars from the Department of Children and Families in Eau Claire? Diane said, well, we're going to pay for offsetting levy on out-of-home care costs, which, that's one thing you can do. Unfortunately, you can't put staff into it. And I would say, so for Calumet and many others in our area, we're putting additional social workers on with that money, because those people are the people in the homes. Those people are monitoring safety plans for kids. They're the ones that are able to keep the kids in the home and prevent out-of-home care placements. But that's a difficult sell when you guys know how much it costs to have a staff person added, right? When you start looking at salary and you start looking at benefits, it's like, wow, that's a lot. And that goes on. But the key is especially in child welfare, those caseloads to be manageable and do what you need them to do to reduce your out-of-home care, which is costlier than staff. You need to start there, and that's the challenge. So I had a few technical difficulties, so I was a little over, but more than willing to answer questions if people have questions. I have a mandate document to hand out to you. I don't know if it's in that box, but we can leave it for people so you can kind of see some of the details around the required programs that we have, and then the revenue summaries that go along with it.
Supervisors, please use your keypads if you wish to ask a question. I see no request to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Are those the handouts then?
Yeah,
Okay, we'll make sure.
I'll put them in the back for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is presentation of petitions, claims, and communications. We have received a rezoning request from Daniel and Regina Maurer in the town of Washington that will come back to us in a future meeting. Also a rezoning request from an owner, Mark Held, that will come from the town of Washington, that will come back to us in a future meeting. We have one oral communication from Supervisor Leary, an announcement, I should say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to draw everyone's attention. On your desk, there's a press release, and it's from the Eau Claire County Housing Authority. We're having an open house on Thursday, October 10th, and the public and supervisors are welcome and invited to attend. It's from 4 p.m. until 5:30 at the Eau Claire County Ag and Resource Center. So we hope you can stop by that day to see the facility, and we will enjoy having you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda under Section 10, reports of standing committees, commissions, and boards under 2.04.160 and second reading of ordinances. First is File 48.
To amend Section 3.20.020B of the Code, County Board of Supervisors Compensation, and to create Section 3.20.020C, D, and E of the Code, County Board of Supervisors Compensation, to repeal Section 3.20.040 of the Code, County Board Committee Per Diems, and to repeal Section 3.20.100 of the Code, Compensation Claims and Payments, to amend Section 2.04.140G, 1, 2, and 3 of the Code, duties of the committee clerk.
This is second reading of this ordinance, so we will be voting on it tonight. Motion? Supervisor Dunning. Second, Supervisor Bates. Explanation, Supervisor Bates.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
I think this is, again, an indication of our effort to try to take away some of the redundant responsibilities that occur within our staff. And this has to do really with the issue of our attendance. The attached ordinance is to eliminate the current process of confirmation of meeting use of attendance per diem form. The change in process will eliminate the verification of meeting notice and attendance by the county clerk's office and the chair. Confirmation of the meeting will be done by email between the county clerk and the county clerk's office and added to each agenda to further confirm. And this is what the workflow will look like. The confirmation of the meeting is completed by email once posted publicly by the county clerk's office. Attendance, the per diem form, is signed by members of the board, committee, or council. The per diem form is collected by the county clerk. The county clerk enters attendees into the designated spreadsheet created by payroll to correctly allocate per diem and mileage. And the attendance per diem form is given then to payroll to keep in their records. The other parts that you have sections on your fax sheet are all areas that have now been deleted from this section. There is no fiscal impact to this particular ordinance change.
Thank you. I see no request to speak. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on File 48. Thank you. We have
23-1.
23 yes, 1 no. The ordinance passes. Thank you. Next is File 52.
To amend Section 3.20.020A3 of the Code, County Board of Supervisors Compensation.
Motion. Supervisor Henning. Second, Supervisor Lavelle. Explanation, Supervisor Bates. I'm hesitating because Supervisor Beckfield is not here this evening, but I am going to ask, is there a member of the Committee on Human Resources who wishes to comment also or explain? Okay, Supervisor Bates.
This, again, everything old is new again. This ordinance changes the monthly pay of County Board Supervisors, other than the chair and vice chair, from $110.50 per month to $125 per month. It has an annual impact of about $1,326, bringing it up to $1,500. This ordinance will go into effect at the organizational meeting of the board following the spring 2020 election. and the fixed fiscal impact, again, is listed in the fact sheet as being $391.50 a month, or $4,698 annually. And I will say that basically at the time that I came out of the board a very long time ago, that our pay at that time was about $110 a month. Then it went up to $125, and this is then it was dropped down, and this is an attempt to bring it back up to that $125 a month.
Thank you. Supervisor Neiman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious what the rationale for the increase is in view of the current budget concerns.
Supervisor Bates.
I think in talking about it in committee, the one thing that we know for sure is that we're certainly not overpaying anyone. When we have young people on our boards that have children at home, very often it turns out they actually lose money every time they come to a meeting because they have to have childcare. We're going into an election. I think we want to make it possible for people that may not have even thought about running for county board to at least consider it. This is a very, very small change. And hopefully it might encourage someone that otherwise might think, I can't afford to do it, to give it a shot. So hopefully we'll support this, and it's a very minor adjustment.
Supervisor Henning.
In 2001, the amount of pay was $125, and the county board voted to drop this down to try to get the unions to drop theirs, and they just laughed at the county board when the county board went down. And this is 18 years ago that we've been at $110.50. So the amount of money we saved there by being stupid and cutting their own pay, that was just before I was on the board, and now to put it back up to where it was in 2001, if anybody doesn't favor that, there's something wrong.
Supervisor Wilkie.
Well, I had to actually cancel my request to speak because Supervisor Henning essentially said what I was going to say, that in 2001, this well-intended gesture on the board's part to drop their salary, not that it meant a lot in terms of dollars, we don't get a lot of dollars, but to send a tone. 2001 was a time that jobs were hard to come by, things weren't going well, so it was to set an example. Didn't work.
Thank you. Supervisor McKinney.
I just wanted to, I've thought about this, and I believe in the need for diversity on this board, and that if we can attract people on limited income, people who may need to pay a babysitter to be here, that we need to think about those kind of costs when we look at raising this very small amount. I would support the raise.
Okay. Supervisor Lavelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe it was about 4 years ago that we gave ourselves a $5 meeting from 25 to 30, and that raise cost me about $300 to have that raised, so because they canceled the meeting. So I'm glad this is going on the salary. But if you go back and look at the history, when I first got on the board in 1986, I'm not counting inflated dollars. We make less money now, dollar for dollar, than I did in 1986. So that's you're not in it for the money. And then getting back to bringing other people on the board, if you had a single mom with a couple children, this money she couldn't afford to pay a babysitter to come to the meeting. So, I mean, this isn't asking a lot. I know it's tough times, but it's not asking a lot from the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding is that at this point, we're able to build this into the budget, and if not, could it be built in by making some adjustment in the money that's been allocated for training and development, since we're not using all of that at the end of the year anyway?
The monies have been built into the proposed budget.
Okay, so this wouldn't be an addition then? Thank you.
I see no other requests to speak. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on file 52. Supervisor Russell. Thank you.
20-4.
20 yes, 4 no. The ordinance passes. Next item on our agenda is file number 50.
To amend Section 4.35.090 of the code, permit, variance, rezoning, special exception, and sign and land use fees, and to amend Section 4.35.02 of the code, shoreline fees, to amend Section 4.35.095 of the code, airport zoning fees, and to amend Section 10.05.001 of the code, all-terrain vehicle routes designated.
Motion, Supervisor Leary. Second, Supervisor Schaffnagel. Speaking to this, Supervisor Pagonis. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oops, sorry. Hit the wrong one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Committee on Finance and Budget has on several occasions encouraged Planning and Development, the Department of Planning and Development, to review fees to determine whether the fee being charged is commensurate with the work being done. And so the fees that you see in front of you are the new set of fees. It's been passed by Planning and Development Committee. They've gone up in most cases a little bit. There are a couple I thought that went down, a couple that went up pretty considerably. But nonetheless, on average, it's about a 5% increase. So basically what we're asking staff to do is to evaluate the time they spend on some of the things that they're doing and making sure that the fees for checking and staff time are equal or as close to possible as the time that the staff spends. So that's what we see here. And then the all-terrain vehicle routes, it's just an increase in applications.
Thank you. I neglected to say that this is second reading of this ordinance, so we are voting on it tonight. I see no requests to speak. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on file 50. The vote is unanimous. The ordinance passes. Thank you very much. File 66.
Authorizing the sale of tax deed property to former owner Stephen S. Gregerson for $20,589.81. Directing Corporation Counsel to prepare a quitclaim deed and the county clerk to execute said quitclaim deed on behalf of Eau Claire County.
Motion. Supervisor Pagonis, second Supervisor Henning. Explanation, Supervisor Pagonis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This property was taken on tax deed sale. Mr. Gregerson was the former owner. By statute, if the former owner is prepared to make payment of all the taxes, interest, and penalty, then the parcels go back to the former owner. So this is an example of that.
Thank you. I see no request to speak. Supervisor.
And if I just might add,
sorry.
The county breaks out even on this. We don't lose any money on this one.
Thank you. Apologies. I see no request to speak. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote in file 66. The vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. Next is file 65.
Approving a budget transfer of $27,000 from the Information Systems Capital Projects account to the Parks Department capital account in 2019.
Motion? Supervisor Chilson, second Supervisor Miller. Explanation to Supervisor Pagonis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Parks Department had a storage shed out at Lake Eau Claire that burned down, and a considerable amount of insurance funds were obtained to put it back in as it previously was. The shed unfortunately had a dirt floor, and so the Parks Department would like to put in a cement floor and would like to upgrade the electrical. It turns out that IS department had an expenditure in capital projects for a piece of software that they were choosing not to do this year. So this is just transferring the capital amount of $27,000 from IS as an expenditure to Parks and Forests for the repair. This requires a 2/3 approval because it's a budget amendment.
Thank you. I see no request to speak. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on file 65. Supervisor Anderson? Thank you. The vote is unanimous. The resolution passes. Thank you. File 68.
Approving a budget transfer of $425,000 from the 6 courtroom capital projects account to fund additional LED lighting projects in the jail and courthouse.
Motion. Supervisor Wilkie, second Supervisor Leary. Explanation, Supervisor Pagonis.
Thank you. We've started already changing out the lighting in the jail. As you can imagine, the lights are on there all day, every day. And so we've started moving into changing them out to LED. And the plan was half of the project was going to be done in 2019 and half in 2020. Well, since the decision was made to not build out the 6th courtroom during 2019, there was some additional flexibility in the capital budget. And so this plan is to be more aggressive on changing out the lighting, completing the jail, and starting in the courthouse. So the amount left in the capital projects for the 6th courtroom was $559,000, give or take, and this would be 425 of that. So it would still be in the capital budget for 2019, but we're changing the use of it. Oh, yes, and I'm assured by many people that we're going to recover all of the cost of the LED lighting in about 3 years. So this is a big deal.
Thank you. Just a reminder, this also is a budget transfer and requires a 2/3 vote. I see no request to speak. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on file 68. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Supervisors, please refer to your addendum sheet. I don't know what color you would call this, but I call it green.
Number 54.
File number, sorry?
That's okay.
That is-
Back to the last one is what she said. We got to go back to the yellow.
Yes.
You know that.
Yeah. Oh, file number 69.
Approving a budget transfer of $134,500 from the 6th courtroom capital projects account and $270,000 from the highway design capital project to fund repairs to the highway building in Altoona.
Motion. Supervisor Chilson, second Supervisor Anderson. Explanation, Supervisor Pagonis.
Yes, thank you. So this was a tough one. A new building for the highway was about $20 million. And when we started looking at that, and given the amount of debt we currently have, we felt that it would be very difficult to do right now. And so we thought we would plan for it in the future probably when some of the jail is paid off. So there was $270,000 in the capital project budget for the purposes of beginning a design for a new highway facility. So we're taking that $270,000 and the remaining $134,000 from that $559 from the 6th courtroom. So in the last vote, we took away $425, $134,000 remains. We're adding them together to get the $404,500, and using that amount to start making needed repairs to the current highway facility. There will probably also be a capital expenditure introduced in 2020 to complete the repairs. Quite a few repairs need to be made, but we're hopeful that sufficient repairs can be made that the highway can continue to use this facility for the next 7 years or so until the some of the jail or courthouse remodeling projects are paid down. This also needs a 2/3 vote.
Supervisor Boerboom.
I just had a question. What happened to the courtroom? Why are we not going through with it?
It's put off till well, first of all, we don't know if we're getting a judge, and we would do it in 2020.
Thank you.
I see no other requests to speak. This also is a budget transfer, am I correct?
Yes.
2/3 vote is required. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on file 69. The vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. We are back on to your yellow sheets now. File number 54.
Ratifying and affirming the Chippewa Valley Regional Airport Commission petition for airport improvement aid dated September 16, 2019.
Motion, Supervisor Bates. Second Supervisor Kronk. Supervisor Moritz is not with us this evening, so I've asked the clerk to read the fact sheet regarding this so that we all have the relevant facts.
The state of Wisconsin acts as an agent for the airports desiring state and federal aid for airport development projects. The Airport Commission passed the necessary resolutions petitioning the Wisconsin Secretary of Transportation for airport improvement aid, but Eau Claire County must affirm the Airport Commission action as the owner of the airport. And Mr. Moritzen is saying that he'd be absent to Chair Smyer and I said this was just procedural.
Right.
To both of us, and
So we
he
have the
agreed with it.
information. Right. Supervisor DeLuca.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to speak to this proposal. I'm not in favor of the petition because of the improvements to the short runway. After talking with the airport today, it will require possibly purchasing land, expanding possibly the fence into the neighborhood off of North Lane and Star Avenue, possibly over to the river side. By allowing this petition to move forward, it allows the secretary as well, and if you noticed in the package on page 24, it discusses that the secretary can acquire property, purchase, gift, lease, or eminent domain the property to meet the requirements for what is necessary for this proposal. I don't have a problem with the expansion for the snow blower at the airport, but I do for the extension of the short runway, and I would request that supervisors consider the impact that this will be for the neighborhood. Granted, it's still under proposal, but once we say yes to the funds and the state gets involved, I believe it will be very rapid, and properties will maybe be purchased or eminent domain without much time available to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other requests to speak. Supervisors, please take in hand your keypads and vote on file 54. Supervisor Maury, thank you. 17 yes
17 to 7.
and 7 no. The resolution passes. Thank you very much. Supervisors, we've reached the end of our agenda. This meeting is now adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689. Or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715